Hi, this is Dave, and welcome to the weekly market recap, closing out the week for Friday, November the 24th. So it's been with the holiday weekend in the States for Thanksgiving, the market action, as you can see here, has been really, really low volume. So we're taking a look at the Dow Futures on the daily chart, and you can see here the relative volume is really low. That said, the price is going to move where the price wants to move, and what we had here essentially was a rally off of this level here. And I apologize, the chart's a little bit messy here, but what I'll do is I'll reconstruct it, and we'll look at some other a couple of other indicators here this week, just to kind of get a different perspective from an indicator basis on some of the things here. So let me just back up a little bit, and let me delete some of the stuff here and recreate the chart. So essentially what we have here, clear this off. Let's see. So essentially what we had here was this area here. Actually, let me just switch charts here altogether so that I can maintain this, and let's just see here. So we'll just change the symbol at YMZ12. Okay, here we go. So we can work with this chart and basically reconstruct it. So I'm just going to delete all this stuff except for a couple of key things. So essentially what we had was I'm going to leave this level on the chart. It's still a key level. So essentially what we had was we had a relevant high to low in place from a Fibonacci perspective. So we had this low all the way up to this high. And in last week's video, what we were talking about was this key 61.8% retracement level, which is essentially the line in the sand from a fib perspective between long and short. So we were talking about in last week's video how we slipped through this level a little bit, but at the end of the day, on Friday, on this day, what we had was it seemed like a lot of big players were stepping into the market with a lot of volume, and this could potentially be a swing low right at this point. So that's essentially played out, and we had to move all the way back up into and past the 21 exponential moving average. So I think the from the perspective, even though we're on low volume, low holiday volume, I mean, this is still a relative move, because I mean, if you were short here and you had to stop here, you would still get stopped out. So a lot of people like to look at the volume and say, well, you know, it doesn't really count because it was on low volume. But if you've ever been in a position that's gone against you on low volume, you know that that's not really always true. And that said, though, I mean, it didn't really take a lot of volume in order to move this. So in a sense, it's not as significant, but it's still a move nonetheless. So I think the relevant data points this week are this trend line. Okay, this trend line in play, and you can see the price came up off this low right into this trend line. So we have another key level here, which coincides with the swing point low somewhere in and around here. Okay, it's not an exact level, but I was looking today at the market around 12,000. This is probably right around 12,960, somewhere in and around that level. And there's a 40-point range from there all the way into 12,000. I'm sorry, 13,000 even. So 13,000 is a key level. It's a key psychological level, and I think that is essentially where the major resistance is going to be. So let me just delete this line here. So there's about a 40-point range in between 13,000. So you're looking around 12,960 to 13,000. So as you can see, we came up into this trend line. You have this congestion area and this area, which is essentially sort of a swing point low, and then we pushed up back into this resistance, and then we broke through it on this wide range bar. You can see this wide range bar there. That's a significant area where a lot of volume came in, and we pushed below this swing point. So this was a level that we were talking about going back a few videos, going back a few weeks. We broke through this level. We hit this level, which is support. Now we're back all the way back into, you know, this key area at 13,000. So the question is, okay, that's great, but are we going higher or lower? Well, from my perspective and in my opinion, these are the scenarios that I'm looking at. So from a scenario perspective, I mean, we've come right back into this trend line. This is the immediate resistance. So the immediate resistance, 13,000. I'm looking at a couple potential scenarios that look something like this. So here's one scenario. One scenario is that we come up here, maybe push through it a little bit, and then we sell back down. Now, once we sell back down, what I'm looking for is two scenarios. I'm looking for a scenario where we put in, let's say, a swing point, which is essentially a higher low, right? So this kind of a structure here where you kind of pull back and then push back off. So I'm looking for this type of a structure and then looking to see if we can break the trend line to the upside. If this scenario happens here, this is going to put me on the bullish side of the market. This is going to make me a bull. So the other scenario that could happen is we could just break this trend line and hold and then start pushing higher. So if that happens, I'd be a little bit more cautious because I would essentially be expecting a pullback at this level, but this is a possibility where we could just break this level and then just start pushing higher. Another scenario, which I'm more inclined to look at, because I'm more inclined to think we're going to get a pullback, you know, from this resistance level, although stranger things happen in the market. But what I'm looking at here is this potential scenario, or this potential scenario is another one that I'm looking at where, you know, where we just come back down and we retest these lows. So if we come back and we retest these lows, this will be the key area to hold at around 12,500 in the Dow future, and then to see if we're going to hold that level and then push back off, or if we come down into back into this level and we crash back down. If we break this level here, this is a significant level, then you know, the market's going to get pretty ugly, and we're essentially we would be looking for at that point probably a retest of these lows, you know, that we came into back in June of last year. Okay, these are significant lows. I don't really think that's going to happen, although, you know, anything can happen in this market. What I really think is going to happen, I'm really looking for these two scenarios to take place. I'm looking for this scenario either to come back down here and push off and break to the to the upside, or just to come down here, test, maybe fake people out, and then push back off. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I don't think we're really going to get, you know, a break of this level and a retest of these lows, although I will change my perspective if that does happen, if we do break these lows decisively. So in terms of decision points, in order to get back on the bull side, I'm looking at a couple of things. So one of the things that I'd be looking at is I'd be looking at like a retracement from, let's say, a pullback rather, from, let's say, this high, this low, and into this, you know, into this zone in here, which would bring us somewhere in and around, you know, 636, 700, somewhere in this zone, where we pull back, let's say, hold this zone, and then push off. So in terms of decision points, I may be looking at this area here just to see if we hold this zone and then we start coming back up. But in order to get on the bull side again, I really want to see a decisive break of this downtrend line to the high side to get back, you know, as a full-blown basically market, you know, stock index bull. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I hope it makes sense. Recording this at the end of the day, Friday. You know, the brain's not 100% you know, sharp. So I hope this all makes sense. So I just wanted to look at a couple of more data points. One of them being my trending indicator looks like it's ready to roll to the high side. So this would bode well for the bullish side. Now, when we look at the stochastics, so we have the fast stochastic, and here we have the slow stochastic. So the fast stochastic is essentially, the stochastic rather, is essentially telling us that we are oversold. Or overbought rather, I'm sorry. We're overbought to the high side in that we should probably be looking for some type of potential pullback, which is kind of leading me to believe this kind of scenario. So I think we've, from a support resistance perspective, we're at resistance there. Let me just clear this off. It's getting kind of messy. We are essentially at resistance here, and you have some confluence, trend line, key levels. You have a little bit of confluence where the resistance is, and the stochastics are kind of telling you that you are oversold in the short term. So this is a short term sell signal, triple S, short term sell signal. Now the stochastics are going bullish. The long the longer term stochastics, and the other thing is that we're looking at here is if you look at the MACD as well, we've got the MACD on the chart. The MACD is crossing to the high side from essentially an oversold situation. So we had this oversold situation in the MACD where, historically these levels you get a bounce at, and then you have a crossover in the MACD here. This is putting me on the bullish side. But that said, this MACD can cross over and we can still get, a short-term pullback. So essentially what I'm looking at then, to make a long story short, is we're into resistance. I'm looking for a pullback, but I'm looking to see if that pullback will hold and we'll push off and break this downtrend line and get back on, essentially the bullish side. If you look at this, we were up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. So even if we get a little probe higher on Monday, I mean, what more do you really want than 5 days of upside? I mean, you're due for a pullback. That's essentially the bottom line. Is I think we are due for a pullback at this point, but not to say that we're going to break this low necessarily. So I hope that makes sense. Let me clear off the screen here, and let's take a look at some of the sister indices. Let's take a look at the S&P futures. So the S&P futures look essentially much the same. If we draw a trend line from these highs, you can see you're right at trend line resistance there. You had 5 days of upside, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right into resistance. This resistance coincides with this swing low, coincides with that congestion area. So you're basically in the same position. The only difference being, if you look at the trending indicator, from a relative perspective, it's back on the bullish side. So this is a pretty powerful signal telling us that essentially maybe we're going bullish again, unless we totally fail this level and totally fail that level. So let's take a look at the Nasdaq futures and see what the Nasdaq futures are telling us at NQ. So the Nasdaq futures look fairly similar. Let's take a look at where we are in terms of the key trend lines. That's not a great trend line. I mean, you've kind of got that trend line there, and you've kind of got let's see, this trend line here, sort of. Depending on where you draw the trend line from, in this case, it's kind of broken this downtrend line, which is quite bullish. The trending indicator is still on the negative side, but it's lost momentum. You're oversold on the stochastics, and you are overbought rather on the short-term stochastics, which bode well for a short-term pullback. But the MACD is rolling to the high side, and you've got low volume. So essentially, the story to me looks the same on all of these scenarios. Let's take a look on all the stock indices rather. Let's take a look at the dollar index. So the dollar index, essentially what we had here was, now I'm on a different computer, so I don't have all the lines that I had on the from last week, But essentially what we had was we were talking about this complex bottom breaking above some of these, key resistance levels, which we did. And now essentially what we've done is we broke, this was the key resistance here at, let me just see here. Let me just change the color here just to illustrate the point. And the weight. So this was 80.21 or somewhere in and around this level here. You can see, how many times we, resistance, 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 boom, we broke through it with a wide range bar. And then we came up, and now we came all the way back down into this level. So at this point in time, this is a fairly significant support level. Resistance rather, once broken, becomes support. So the question is, are we going to hold this level? And if you look at it from the perspective of the dollar index moving inverse the stock indices, which essentially they do, as well as the euro, but this level is support, and you can see that in the stock indices we're at key resistance, while in the dollar index we're at key support. So this is a key support level, and I would expect probably a short-term bounce, at least a bounce off of this level, and who knows where it's going to go from there. But I think we're going to get, in my opinion, probably at least a short-term bounce off of that level. At least the first, you broke through it decisively. You spent a lot of time above it. You should get at least, a bounce off of that level, even if it ultimately crashes through and retest that trend line. If that's what it decides to do, the first test you should at least get, a fairly decent little bounce, at least, somewhere up and around, some of these levels potentially. So that's kind of where we're at in the stock indices. You can see here the MACD rolled to the low side, but the stochastics, this is a bottoming pattern in the stochastics, and what you would generally like to see is it come back above, the 20 threshold here. I believe that's 10 or 20, and push back up above here and at least get, a bounce. But this is essentially a sort of a buy signal in the short-term stochastics if we push back above here. So I think we're going to get a little bit of a bounce here anyways, because it's a little bit overdone in the fast stochastics, even though the longer-term stochastics are still, essentially negative. So I think a bounce at this key level would make sense. Let's take a look at the euro, and I apologize for the repetition here. As I mentioned, Friday is brain dead day. So let's just take a look at the euro quickly and then wrap up this video. We really need to see where next week shapes up. I mean, we really had a shortened holiday week with Thanksgiving in the United States. That really affected the markets. Having the market close yesterday, only opened for half a day today. It's a shortened holiday week on low volume. A lot of people have probably taken some time off, and that's essentially what we're seeing in the market. There wasn't really much to do in the market this week except just kind of watch it, and now it's important to see what's going to set up for next week. I forgot to mention something on the dollar index. Let me just kind of jump back. On the dollar index, one of the things that we were looking at was these Fibonacci's. And we were looking at, to see last week if we were going to fail the 50% retracement from this high to this low. And essentially that's what we did. We probed through it. We didn't make it quite to the 618, and then we pulled down from that level. So I just wanted to highlight that, and I also want to have that, on the chart. So let's look at the inverse. Let's look at the inverse of the dollar index, the euro then. So here are the euro futures. We're looking at, right now we're into this key $1.30 level again. So it's funny how these levels, we keep coming back to these levels. Look at the, that massive pullback in the dollar index. We had a massive, one-day move in the euro, really a couple hundred ticks, almost 200 ticks really, all the way up from the close to the $1.28 level all the way up to $1.30. So at this point in time, the $1.30 is the key resistance level again. And the interesting thing will be to see if we're going to, hold this level and basically sell back down from that level, or if we're going to push through it. So essentially, you've got overbought stochastics in the short term, but you've got a MACD crossover. So you really don't really have much except to really say, like, we look overdone, we're into resistance. We'll probably at least get some type of a pullback from that level, and then it'll be interesting to see if we pull back and push through, or if we just pull back and stay below the $1.30. So that's all I have this week. Not sure how long this video is, but hopefully it's not too long. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend, good trading, and we'll look forward to seeing you hopefully next weekend at our upcoming meetup, where we will cover elements of a trading plan. So you can sign up for that. I'll just link you over to that site. Okay, so if you come over to this link, www.meetup.com/Burlington-active-traders-investors, that will essentially take you over to the Burlington Active Traders and Investors Meetup. So if you or you can also search for the Burlington Active Traders and Investors Meetup. We have the elements of a trading plan meetup set up for Sunday, December the 2nd. That's next Sunday. Usually we have it on the last Sunday of the month, which would be this Sunday, but because of scheduling conflicts, we decided to postpone it an extra week till next week. So the cost is $15 per person to cover out-of-pocket expenses. We have eight people attending at this point in time. We have another 10 spots available. Those are going to close up pretty quickly. This is a topic that a lot of people are interested in, so I expect the meeting to be a full one, and it'll be taking place at the Market Trading Concepts trading floor here in Burlington, 3455 Harvester Road. So just come to the meetup site and click on upcoming meetups, and you can register for this event. If you have any questions, you can come to the member section, and you can send me an email directly through the meetup site, and I will get that, and I'll be happy to respond to you. So good trading. Look forward to seeing you at this meetup. Hope it helps, and we will see you hopefully next week or at another video update. Take care.